This warehouse doesn't just store money. It holds over $100 million in cash on any given day. Welcome to the Dunbar Armored Cash Distribution Center in Los Angeles, a high-security hub where armored trucks arrive daily, delivering and collecting massive sums for banks across the city. These trucks are protected by armed guards. Even the drivers are armed. And yet, one man watched, waited, and plotted to rob it. He wasn't a seasoned criminal. In fact, none of the 6 men involved in what would become one of the largest cash heists in U.S. history had any criminal background at all. They were ordinary people, law-abiding, clean records. But they were about to steal tens of millions. Their plan was meticulous. Their execution was almost flawless. But in the end, it was a few tiny plastic pieces, overlooked, forgotten, that brought the whole operation crashing down. If you want to know how such a perfect plan unraveled, stay with us. When we want cash, we walk into a bank and make a withdrawal. But where does that cash come from? Banks don't print money. It's distributed to them by specialized companies, often private or semi-government, using armored trucks, secure vaults, and heavily armed staff. In 1997, Dunbar Armored was one of the major companies in this business. With distribution centers across the country, Dunbar's job was simple: move cash from the Federal Reserve and central banks to local bank branches. The Los Angeles Center was the crown jewel, a single-story building that handled more physical cash than any bank in the region. This was the city's cash nerve center. On any given day, more than $100 million flowed through its vaults. If you were a criminal looking for a target, this place was gold. And yet, the irony? It had less security than most banks. Banks are open to the public. That means tighter protection, bulletproof glass, guards, panic buttons. But Dunbar's center was a private facility. No customers, no walk-ins, just employees, cameras, and a vault full of money. Let's take a quick tour of the layout. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a boring warehouse. A rotating surveillance camera monitored the perimeter, but it was the only one outside. Armored trucks came in through a secure gate, where money was loaded and unloaded. A separate small door served as the entrance for employees. Inside, things were more tightly monitored. Cameras lined the hallways, the guard room, and the vault zone. But even here, security had blind spots. There were 25 cameras, but only 4 monitors in the control room. This meant the video feeds rotated through, no full surveillance at any given moment. If you knew the timing, you could slip past unnoticed. Here's how the layout worked. Guard room, a break area that doubled as a security base. Monitoring room, a small control station with 4 screens showing camera feeds. Vault room contained the main vault with a steel door as thick as a bank's. Money preparation area. This is where the accountants counted and packaged the cash before it entered or exited the vault. Loading zone connected to the parking area. The final stop before the money hit the road. Now, here's the catch. This center was impossible to scout. No one could just walk in and observe like at a public bank. For an outsider, it was a fortress with no blueprint. But one man didn't need to scout from the outside. He was already inside. His name was Allan Pace, a security inspector at the facility. He had never committed a crime in his life. No record, no trouble, just a sharp mind, military-level training with firearms, and daily access to millions. Allan's job was to inspect the armored trucks and make sure all security measures, locks, radios, tracking systems, were working perfectly. He knew everything about how the operation ran. And he wasn't working alone. His girlfriend, Tamiko, also worked at the center. She was in charge of the security footage, managing the cameras and recording devices. That gave Allan critical access to the blind spots, schedules, and video feeds. She was his silent partner. But then, everything changed. Tamiko was suddenly fired. The company found suspicious money bags hidden in an unmonitored corner of the building. There was no hard evidence, but enough to let her go. Whether it was a misunderstanding or something more, we'll never know. But Allan took it as a warning. He knew the company might start watching him next, And so he made a decision. It was now or never. He needed a team. The first recruit, his best friend, Eugene Hill. Like Allan, Eugene had no criminal record and worked in private security. Next came two more longtime friends, Freddie McCrary, a former security guard and Allan's childhood friend since age 10. Terry Brown, whom Allan met while working at a nightclub. One night in an empty parking lot, Allan drew a full diagram of the Dunbar facility using chalk on the pavement. He explained the plan in detail: entrances, exits, blind spots, and the perfect timing. His confidence was infectious. The group agreed. Then, Allan did something bold. He brought a camera to work and began snapping photos inside the facility, pretending to take casual pictures of co-workers, vault areas, camera placements, and staff. No one questioned him. He was one of their own. With these photos, Allan created a detailed floor plan and distributed it to his crew. He drilled them over and over: where to go, who to expect, and when to act. The plan was sharp. They would use two vehicles, a regular sedan for the approach, and a rented moving truck to load the cash. Friday night was the chosen date, just before the weekend, when the vault held its highest cash reserves. They'd use a key Allan had to access the building. The vault door would be left open during money prep. No need to crack it. Only one guard would be on duty, and Allan knew exactly when his dinner break started. The monitor in the vault room had an emergency button under the desk. He'd have to be neutralized first to prevent an alarm. Their target wasn't just money, it was untraceable money. Old bills, mixed denominations, no sequential serial numbers. Allan knew which bundles to take and which to leave. But one more thing became clear: they needed a sixth man. That's when they brought in Thomas Johnson, another friend with security experience. Now, the crew was complete. 6 men, all former security guards, all trusted by Allan. They trained daily, memorized employee faces, rehearsed every move. They were preparing for what they believed would be the perfect crime. Allan Pace gave his crew strict instructions: wear all black, masks, gloves, no exceptions. It wasn't just about disguise, it was about control. They had no intention of hurting anyone, but they armed themselves anyway, for protection and for intimidation. The sight of guns alone would be enough to make employees comply without resistance. Every second would count, and avoiding detection by the cameras was critical. Inside the Dunbar facility, 25 surveillance cameras monitored everything, but only 4 monitors in the control room displayed their feeds, rotating every 10 seconds. Thanks to Tamiko's inside knowledge, the crew knew exactly when each camera would be active on the screens, giving them the perfect window to move undetected. Allan trained the team like a professional unit, mapping out corridors, calculating timing, distances, and angles. Every move was rehearsed, every step was measured. By September 1997, the team was ready, but just as they were about to finalize the timing, everything changed. Allan was fired from his job at Dunbar, suddenly and without warning. Worse, he was forced to return his keys immediately. But Allan wasn't done yet. Before handing the keys back, he secretly made duplicates. Now under pressure, he called his crew and set the date: Friday, September 12, 1997. Preparations shifted into overdrive. Allan asked Eugene to rent a small to medium moving truck. Since Allan was now a former employee and would naturally become a suspect after the heist, they needed a strong alibi. Eugene had a solution. A large family gathering was scheduled for that Friday night. It was perfect. Dozens of relatives and friends would be present. The plan: attend the party, mingle, be seen, then quietly slip away to pull off the heist and return before anyone noticed. But on the day of the operation, a final problem emerged. There were only 5 team members. One man had to remain outside with the truck. Another would need to guard the restrained security officer. That left only 3 to enter the vault room, and Allan wasn't comfortable being outnumbered by employees inside. They needed one more. That's when Eric Boyd joined the crew, just 8 hours before the heist. He was Allan's brother-in-law, married to Allan's sister, a last-minute addition, but someone Allan trusted completely. Eric's role was simple: stay in the truck. To protect their identities, the team agreed to call each other only by numbers during the operation, from 1 to 6. They also carried radios for communication and made a pact. If anyone got caught, they would remain silent. The rest would take care of their families until their release. Friday night, 10 p.m. The crew arrived at the family party. They laughed, they mingled. They made sure people saw them. It was all part of the plan. Then, at 11 p.m., one by one, they slipped out, each leaving at different times to avoid suspicion. 2 of them got into a sedan, the other 4 climbed into the rented truck. They drove in convoy until they reached a location near the Dunbar Center. There, the sedan was parked, and all 6 regrouped in the truck. Eric, the driver, stayed in regular clothes. The others climbed into the cargo area and changed into their all-black outfits, loaded their weapons, and prepared for what came next. As they approached the facility, luck was on their side. The only exterior security camera, a rotating one, was pointed directly at a pickup truck in the parking lot. That truck belonged to the on-duty vault supervisor, a man Allan knew well. In fact, Allan knew the supervisor was obsessed with his car. He routinely asked guards to angle the security camera toward it instead of the building entrance. That habit, that one small vanity, became a huge advantage for the robbers. But even if it hadn't, Allan already knew the camera's rotation schedule. With absolute precision, they walked up to the building and used Allan's copied key to enter the facility. Now came the hardest part, avoiding the indoor cameras. They moved silently, methodically, pausing when cameras were live, then darting forward when the feeds switched. Tamiko's insider knowledge had been invaluable. They knew the layout, they knew the angles, they knew the rhythm of the surveillance system. Following the path on their internal map, the group moved through the hallways until they reached the guard room. It was just after midnight, right on schedule. Allan knew the night guard took his dinner break at exactly this time. That meant the guard likely wasn't watching the monitors, a critical detail Allan had picked up from years of working alongside him. Sure enough, when they entered the room, they found the guard eating. He was quickly and quietly restrained, his weapon was taken, and most importantly, his keys were taken, including the keys to the vault. Allan moved swiftly to the monitoring room, where the 4 screens displayed the interior feeds. In the vault room, he could see 3 employees, the supervisor and 2 accountants. That was the exact number they had anticipated. But just as things seemed to be going perfectly, something unexpected happened. Another armed guard walked into the building. He was a truck driver, someone who shouldn't have been there at that time. Deliveries had finished for the night. The building should have been closed. Allan acted fast. He and one of the others rushed to intercept him before he could react. Fortunately, the driver was not carrying his weapon and was quickly restrained and added to the group on the floor. One team member was now assigned to stay behind and watch over the restrained guards. The remaining 4 headed for the vault. Before entering, Allan peeked through the glass, confirming there were no additional people inside. This next step was critical. The supervisor had a panic button under his desk. If he pressed it, the police would arrive instantly. Allan burst through the door with the team, weapons raised. Hands up, don't move. The supervisor froze. The accountants panicked. The team moved fast, restraining everyone and pulling them away from any alarms. During the takedown, one accountant was shoved to the ground hard and injured her shoulder. When she cried out in pain, Allan knelt down. "Don't worry, dear," he told her. "Everything's going to be all right." With the employees secured, they asked the supervisor, "Is anyone else in the building?" He confirmed, no one else was inside. Now came the main event. They called in Eric over the radio to bring the truck into the loading bay. But as Eric backed up the truck, he accidentally hit the side wall, breaking a rear tail light. A small piece of the light casing fell off, unnoticed by the team. It would become important later. Inside the vault, the gang began loading the cash, mostly in $20 bills. Allan carefully directed them to avoid newly printed bills or any with sequential serial numbers. Those would be easy to trace. Instead, they targeted older bundles. The money was packed into garbage bags and hauled to the truck, load after load, until the vehicle was completely full. But they weren't done yet. They needed to erase the evidence. In 1997, there were no cloud backups, no online storage. Surveillance footage was stored on physical tapes, so they took the recording devices themselves. Not just the tapes, but the entire hardware. And thanks again to Tomiko, Allan knew there was a second backup recorder hidden in one of the offices, a secret only a true insider would know. He found it, and he took it. With every trace of footage gone, they made one last move: sabotage the door lock. They didn't want police realizing a key had been used. By damaging the lock, it would look like a forced entry. Now it was time to disappear. But there was a problem. They had stolen so much cash, there was no room left in the truck. Two of the men couldn't fit inside with the bags. The plan had been to drive away in the truck, then drop Allan and Eugene at the nearby sedan. Now they had a choice: leave behind some of the money, or leave behind some of the team. Allan refused to part with even a single bag. Instead, he slammed the truck doors shut, told the others to go, and he and Eugene stayed behind. Then, he walked over to the bound vault supervisor, reached into his pocket, and took his pickup truck keys. Moments later, Allan and Eugene climbed into the supervisor's truck and drove away, heading for their sedan parked nearby. Once they switched vehicles, they left the pickup behind, vanishing into the night with nearly $19 million in cash, and not a single shot fired. The crew had escaped, but their job wasn't done yet. The final step of the plan was to return to the party, their carefully constructed alibi. They drove to Eugene's house first. There, they stored their weapons, changed out of their black gear, and put on their party clothes. Then, just like nothing had happened, they returned to the family gathering, arriving around 1:30 a.m., barely 90 minutes after they had left. The stolen cash, nearly $19 million, was still in the back of the truck, parked right out front. Inside, they smiled, laughed, and blended back into the crowd. Witnesses would later confirm they'd never left the party. Back at the Dunbar Center, the scene was chaos. Roughly an hour after the heist, the restrained employees managed to free themselves and called the police. The LAPD, FBI, and later the IRS descended on the scene. At first glance, the front door showed signs of a broken lock, but the door itself hadn't been forced open. Investigators immediately suspected a cover-up. It looked like someone had used a key to enter, then sabotaged the lock to hide that fact. That meant one thing: an inside job. The second clue was even more telling: a small red plastic fragment near the loading dock. It didn't match any of Dunbar's trucks. It had broken off when the rented truck hit the wall. The clue was subtle, but damning. Besides that, the scene was immaculate. The robbers had taken all surveillance tapes, even the hidden backup. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Meanwhile, Allan and his team had rented a small garage to stash the stolen money. The idea was simple: lay low, wait until the investigation cooled down, and then divide the cash slowly and carefully. The FBI confirmed the total amount stolen: $18.9 million, making it the largest cash heist in U.S. history at the time. But fearing copycats, authorities told the media it was just more than $1 million. Still, internally, investigators were convinced this was an inside job. They began interviewing over 130 people: current employees, former workers, and anyone connected to the Dunbar Center. Everyone was put through lie detector tests. Only 2 people failed: Allan Pace and his girlfriend, Tomiko, the former surveillance system manager. That wasn't all. Remember the female accountant injured during the robbery? She had been forced to the ground, and while she cried out, one of the masked men had tried to comfort her, saying, "Don't worry, dear. Everything will be all right." She recognized that voice, the tone, the way of speaking. It was Allan. At this point, investigators were sure Allan was involved. But suspicions weren't enough. They needed evidence. No arrest was made. Weeks turned into months. A full year passed. The case remained open. The FBI, LAPD, and IRS had nothing solid to go on. They offered a $250,000 reward for information, But no one came forward. Why? Because Allan had made sure of it. He instructed the team to be extremely cautious. No new houses, no luxury cars, no flashy vacations. If any of them started throwing around money, they'd be caught. Instead, he had them spend small amounts, slowly and only on necessities. Allan even opened a front business in the entertainment industry, a cover for laundering their cash. For those unfamiliar, money laundering involves funneling stolen cash through a legitimate business. You record it as profit, pay taxes on it, and suddenly it's clean. But you can't launder millions overnight. It has to be slow, steady, and quiet. It worked. For 2 years, the gang lived comfortably, undetected, while investigators remained stuck in the dark. But eventually, someone slipped. It wasn't Allan, it wasn't Tamiko, it was Eugene Hill, Allan's best friend, and the first person he brought into the crew. After 2 years of silence, Eugene believed they were safe. So he walked into a real estate office with $100,000 in cash, still bundled with Dunbar straps, dated September 11-12, 1997. A rookie mistake. The real estate agent didn't say anything. He completed the transaction. Had Eugene sign the paperwork. Then he called the FBI. Investigators confirmed it. The straps matched the exact date of the heist. Now they had a lead, and they followed it quickly. They looked into Eugene's finances and saw he'd been writing checks from his sister's bank account, even though she didn't have the income to justify it. More evidence of money laundering. And then, the final piece fell into place. The red plastic taillight fragment. Investigators matched it to a specific make and model of rented truck. They went through rental records across Los Angeles. And there it was. Eugene Hill had rented that exact truck. September 12, 1997. Returned September 13th. They had their man. Eugene was arrested. And under pressure, he broke. Investigators told him that if he didn't confess, his sister, the one whose account he'd been using, would be charged as well. She'd face money laundering and conspiracy charges. Years in prison. Faced with that choice, Eugene chose family over loyalty. He confessed, and he gave up everything. He named every single accomplice, detailed the entire plan, told them exactly who was involved, how the operation was executed, and how they got away. Over the next few months, all 6 members of the crew were arrested, and in court, they turned on Allan. They testified that he was the leader, the mastermind, the man who had planned every step and brought them into the scheme. Allan received the harshest punishment, 24 years in federal prison. The others, Eugene included, received lighter sentences, ranging from 10 to 12 years. Allan's greatest regret wasn't the crime itself, it was trusting Eugene, his childhood friend, who, in the end, made the mistake that brought them all down. But there was one final twist. Out of the $18.9 million stolen, the FBI recovered only $7 million. That means over $11 million was never found. Despite serving years behind bars, most of the gang was released, and at least on paper, still millionaires. The last member was released just last year. And as for the missing money, well, it's still missing. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel.